Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Writing Visual Studio Extensions with Matt. That's me. And as always, we have the talented producer behind the stage here,
No,
James. Hello, James.
not talented. Just chilling on a Friday. It's very chilly.
Mm-hmm.
I can see you're wearing a jacket. I'm assuming it's cold in the garage.
It's kind of it's that type of year. It's the time of year, yeah.
It's happening. I'm excited though because I feel like ski season is upon us. I'm very excited about it. So see if that happens.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take my son up. He just turned 5 just the other day, and I think this is going to be his first time on skis this winter. So I'm looking forward to it.
Pizza, French fries. Pizza, French fries. No.
All right.
That's when you're skiing.
Yeah.
French fries.
I'll try that.
Okay. There you go. I mean, because I think as a little kid they would like that. No, I don't know.
I think so.
We'll find out.
Yeah. So James, today's topic is a very special one because, and maybe to you as well, because I know that you have been doing some web in your many years, in your decades of developing using Visual Studio. You've been doing web as part of that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I blend in a little web development. I think you can't get away from it, even though I particularly do mobile app development. I sometimes do some server backend, I do some web admin pages, some dashboards, things like that. I've been doing a little ASP.NET. I literally was playing with my website, which is all Node and all crazy. But most of the time I'm trying to stay in Blazor World. Blazor World feels good to me right now. So, but yeah.
Okay. So what we're doing today is not specific to web at all. Like there's nothing web about it, but we can use it for web and all sorts of other things. And it's called single file generators. So let me explain to you what single file generator is. It's a way that you can have a file. It could be any file. It could be a C# file, it could be an XML file, JSON file, whatever. And whenever you save it to disk, you produce a code behind file based on that C# file or whatever file it might be. So we've used this here in this show like pretty much every week, the way we synchronize the V6 manifest file and the VSCT file into a C# code behind file. That is using a single file generator. And so it's really cool. It's basically you can do whatever you want today. What we're going to do is we're going to take something that's written in one language, and whenever you save that document, whenever you type in that one language, it's going to produce a code behind file in a different language. So it's going to translate from one language to the other. And that actually just hit me right now. You could do this with text. So you can write in English, but you can spit out Danish as a code behind file if you wanted to. Interesting. I never thought of that till right now. Okay. So brand new use case here. Do you want to use Visual Studio to write well, if it's Markdown, yeah. Why not? Okay. So, James, the reason I asked you about web was because, the web is made out of 3 things, pretty much. CSS, JavaScript, and HTML. Those are the building blocks of the web. And when it comes to the CSS, there's kind of different flavors of CSS. There's one called less, and there's one called SAS. And there's others as well, but those are the 2 big ones. And so what if we could do it so that so basically what they are, let me explain what less and SAS is. And we're going to concentrate on SAS today. So SAS is a superset of CSS. So CSS is a very, very simple language that it describes how you can set background colors and margins and padding and stuff like that on your website using a very simple syntax. SAS is a superset of the features of CSS. So any valid CSS file is also a valid SAS file, but in SAS you can do more. You can have functions, you can have all sorts of different things that simply isn't there for regular CSS that the browsers understand. So it's important that when you write your SAS, that you then transpile that into CSS so the browsers can understand it. And so that's what we're going to do here. We're going to basically create a compiler or a transpiler for SAS files to turn them into CSS. But this can be used, this is just because I had to do one example, but so you can imagine you can use this for all sorts of other things. So let's get Mark's question on here. That why would I write a single file generator instead of alternatives like MS Build code generator or the new C# source generators? There could be different reasons for that. So there's nothing wrong with the two other technologies that are listed here, not at all. And they are better for certain things than a single file generator. And if it's MS Build, you are limited to build time execution. So that's a huge factor. Like if I want to change my background color of my website, let's say, in my CSS file or in my SAS file, I don't want to have to compile my website to be able to see that change on, in the browser. So MS Build for that scenario is wrong. It's not as good as design time. We want design time or real time, if you will. The C# source generators, I don't know too much about them. They're relatively new, but I do believe that they are based on Roslyn. So if you're going to do something that doesn't have anything to do with Roslyn, like for instance, CSS and SAS files, or XML or JSON, then they don't apply. That's my understanding. If that's not true, then let me know in the comments. And of course, the downside of using a single file generator is that it requires you to have the single file generator in the version of Visual Studio that you are currently using. Whereas if it was MS Build, you could pack it up in a Nuget package that has a target file and the tasks that run and do all those things, and it will work anywhere at build time. But again, at build time. So pros and cons, but been doing Web Essentials for many years and all that sort of stuff, and this seems to be a very popular way of doing this that is liked by a lot of people. So let's head in. Is this like your web compiler, was the question? Yes, this would be, but a much simpler, and I wouldn't say better, but a much simpler version of that. So not as feature rich, but it will illustrate the point of a single file generator very, very well, I think. Okay. So let's jump to the. I should share my screen.
I mean, if you want to, you don't have to, Mads. You can live your life in general. Just you be you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, am I on? My screen is on.
You're good to go. You're good to go.
All right. So let's start at the beginning. Like back to basics. Let's create a new V6 project, and I'm gonna call this SAS Compiler. Where do we put it? I want to put it in my GitHub folder. Okay. So there we go. So this is just an empty project. We know this, and I'm gonna now add a couple of Nuget packages. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna grab two Nuget packages. One is one for SAS, and there are different ones. The one I like is called SCSS here. So they renamed SAS to SCSS. I kind of like this one, Sharp SCSS. So let's grab that one. And another thing we have to do when we're dealing with web files, such as both JavaScript and CSS and HTML, actually, but maybe not as important, is that we want to minify and compress CSS files. So in order to do that, I'm going to grab something called nuglify. And we have that one right here. So I'm going to install that one too. Okie dokie. So let's create a class and let's call this the SAS Transpiler. It's not really a compilation, it's a transpilation. It doesn't compile it to an executable, it transpiles from one language to another. And so the question here is, what does nuglify do? Well, it takes, when you have a lot of code, let's just take this C# file right here. You see all this white space? There's line breaks and all that sort of stuff. When I run this through the nuglify, it basically removes all white space. It removes redundant semicolons and all sorts of things to make it as small as possible. Because in browsers, we care about how much things weigh as we transfer them over the wire, right? So we want them as small as possible. So we need a class that inherits from base code generator with, if I can spell it, with site. And we're going to import the using statement. There it is. And then it says, oh, do you want to implement the interface or the base class? And say, yes, we do. Okay. So this is kind of simple, right? We just need two methods. First, get the default extension. So we want to return a CSS file. Like that. So this is a method, not a property, because you could imagine that we could produce based on various different, based on different logic, we could want to return a different file extension based on whatever it is, right? So, but we're always going to return CSS here. And then we need to generate code. All right. So this one is kind of interesting. So I need my SAS what? I need SAS. Is that all it's called? SAS dot convert file to CSS. Okay. And notice that we get an input file name and file content. So in this case, it wants the input file name. And we're not going to give it any options. We probably should, if this was a real thing. So this becomes what? This becomes the result. Okay, so now I have the result. So what do we have on the result? We have .css. So that's the string result. Okay. Let me use the, hang on there. Oh, what am I doing? I was trying to zoom and I went too far. Okay. So result.css is our compiled or transpiled string. So we're going to pass that into our nuglify. So then we do minify equals nuglify dot nuglify, I think it's called, or uglify dot css dot. Oh, it's a method. It takes the source. So it takes the result dot css, and then we can give it some settings. Maybe we'll do that later. And then we just return minify dot code, which is now, it needs a byte array. It needs a byte array. So we're doing encoding UTF-8 dot get bytes. Okay. And then it's complaining. It wants me to use explicit types. Okay, I will. Today I will. Just make it a little prettier. Let's do this. Okay. Clean up here in our using statements. Could this be it? Could this really be it? Are we done? Almost. So let's see here. I just need to register this and then it will work, right? Potentially. So let me go to my package class and remove my comment here. So all I need to do is to register this, and I do that with provide code generator. Type of, and that would be SAS Transpiler. Oh, and then it needs a name and a description. And you know what? I actually like to keep that in here. So let's do some consts. So let's do public const string name equals name of SAS Transpiler. And public const string description equals. Okay, so I'm probably now going to create another religious war here. In a public constant, is that also underscore, or is that okay to do with a capital like I would do with a public property?
Yeah, that's fine.
What do people think in the comments?
I think it's fine because I consider it very similar to just a getter, right? I mean, it's constant, but you use it the same as a getter. So that's how I've always considered it. We'll see. Const all caps. People say, "Oh, that's ugly to me. I don't like that."
Oof. Yeah.
Someone says, "Why not use the Visix constant?" I don't know what that says. Pascal 100%. Mark says no underscore. Jan says Pascal is good.
All right.
think
So
we're
this seems okay then. That's good to know. So let's fill in the SAS Transpiler.name, SAS Transpiler.description, generate design time, yes, true, and then register code base equals true. I feel like I need to close that parenthesis. Okay. Let's Control F5. I'm not even gonna go into the debugger because this is just gonna work, right? We don't even need to attach anything. It'll just work. Is that the famous last words? We'll see. I forgot this, James. I actually did a reset of my experimental instance. So I do that every now and again. So if you've ever done that, or if you don't know what that is, if you go in here and say reset the Visual Studio 2019 experimental instance, make sure you have all your Visual Studio instances are closed when you do that. And that will like disable all the extensions that you've been working on for a long time and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of just cleans things up a little bit. And it resets I think the settings to an extent as well. So let's open a project. Let's do a new project. And I don't care about the project. It could be any project. So let's just do .NET Core Console app. No. Yes. No. Yes. Oh, there's a question here from Kenton. What's the question?
It wants to know if you can build an extension that will do voice recognition. I mostly didn't feature it because it's more of a suggestion, but you can answer. Can you build anything, I think is the question.
You can build anything. I actually answered this very question last week, and there is an extension out there called Voice Commands that does exactly that. It just listens and executes commands that you're saying. So go check out on the marketplace Voice Commands. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to add a new file, and I'm going to add a SAS file. Can you believe that? Visual Studio ships with SAS files. Okay, so now we have a SAS file. Here's some stuff I could write in it. I could say display flex. Let's crank this up a little bit so everyone can see. And let's do justify content center. Okay, so there's nothing SAS about this yet. It's actually just CSS. I totally forget syntax for SAS. Is SAS the one that's using for? What is the syntax for variables in SAS? Is it something like this?
I'm just Googling very fast. I have no idea.
Yeah, here it is, var. So we could say alignment. Okay, so this is SAS. This isn't actually CSS. So now I can go in here and I can write a custom tool. Let me zoom in. So the properties of my SAS file. Come on. Windows. Oh, my FN key is not in. That's been causing me all these. Okay, I don't know. This is weird. So if you F4 or go to properties on your SAS file, you can, under custom tool, you can just type SAS Transpiler because that was the name we gave it. So now we've registered that, and I should be able to right click and say run custom tool. And nothing happens. Hang on. It's because there was an exception. I can hardly believe it. I was too cocky before. Could also be because there's .NET Core console and not web or something like that. Okay, so now we're attached. Let's run this. Run custom tool. Okay, here we go. So there's something wrong with my code. Ah, yes. Okay, so this one could not, this brings us to a very, very interesting thing when it comes to V6s. So it could not find a DLL called lib SAS. Okay, so let me explain to you what that is. Let me stop debugging here. So what happened is, let's go look at my v6. So let's just go into my bin debug folder and open the v6. So here I have sharp CSS. That's one of the Nuget packages that I was using. Both that one and Uglify are in my v6, so they get shipped with my extension, which is a good thing. Now the thing about the SAS compiler here, the one called Sharp SAS, is that it's basically a .NET wrapper around libsas, which is a native component. That's sort of the official SAS transpiler. But there is no SAS transpiler DLL called libsas.dll in this extension, right? In this v6. I need to make sure that it makes it in. Okay, so it actually ships in the Nuget package. So let's find the Nuget package. So I'm going to go to, so if you don't know where Nuget packages are stored, they're stored under your user profile in the .Nuget folder. And so we need to find Sharp SAS. It's right here. 2.0 was the version we had. Runtimes, and you can see here now we have them. We know that we're always Windows x86. And then we just take libsas right there.
96. You added a 10 on there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You still running 86?
Yeah, I didn't know you're on 96. This is new hotness. I need this.
Get with the times, man. All right. So here's what I like to do. I like to take it, copy it, and I'm creating a folder here called lib, and I'm going to just copy libsas into that. So this now lives on my solution level. And so I'm going to go into my project, and I'm going to add a reference. Going to browse, and I'm going to find, what do we call it? SAS compiler, libsas. There it is. Oh, yeah. I can't do that because it's a native component, and a .NET project like this doesn't know what to do with it. So I'm going to do something else. I'm going to right-click and say add my I'm right-clicking my project and say add existing item. And so now I can go in and do lib, and I have to see all files, libsas. And I'm just going to copy it in as a link. I don't need the file to actually physically be in my project here. So all I need to do is to hit F4 to see the properties and make sure that build action is content and include in v6 is set to true. Okay, so now if we run it, should I, okay, I'm going to be bold again and just run it without debugger attached because it's going to just work. Oh yeah, James, thank you for finding the voice commands. If you have any, if you want to contribute to it, feel free to. I haven't updated it for quite a while.
Also, while it's loading, Sebastian Ross says, the .NET team guidelines are to use Pascal casing to name all constant local variables and fields.
Pascal casing. So what about the underscore? Are the .NET Core team wrong, Sebastian?
I think no underscores, right? I don't know. Sebastian, figure that out for us.
Okay. So I'm now going to change this from center to left. And I'm going to save. So everybody look at what happens over here in the Solution Explorer. I'm saving it. And boom. We got a chevron. I can open it. And now we have a CSS file underneath that was transpiled from SAS to CSS and is now minified. Wow. Right? How amazing is that? No underscore, Sebastian says. All right. So, okay. So basically, that's amazing. I think. Because it's one of the easiest, most powerful types of extensions that we can really do, I think. Oh. So, that was cool. So that just works. So every time I update my SAS file, my CSS file is going to be reproduced. And that's, of course, then the CSS file that I reference from my website, right? So.
Is it minify? Is it? Oh, it is. Is it minifying it? It is minifying it.
That's what Uglify does here in Uglify.
Can you make it so that you could set a parameter to either minify it or unminify it? Because sometimes you want to look at pretty. I mean, I like to look at pretty CSS, and then like the final step, right, is like then minify it. Like right before you upload it to the server, you're like, okay, now minify this junk, right? So I
Yes.
like to look at the pretty CSS.
You can totally do that.
The prettifier.
The prettifier. Yep, you can totally do that. You can do whatever you, so these, because these take options, right? So if we take Uglify, so that's, what is that? Uglify options for this? And Uglify.
Topco asks, do you have to manually build it or will it rebuild automatically on each build? Like if you were to build the, I guess, debug it, I guess it'll happen every time, right? When does it happen?
When it produces the, every time you save the file, it has nothing to do with build. It's when you save the file.
Yep. Someone was also asking, these are all non-asynchronous calls. Is this going to slow down the, I'll see if I can find this question. Is it going to slow down anything?
It is.
Matthew was asking about async versions of them.
There is none.
I got to imagine it's pretty quick. But I guess if you had lots of files, right?
CSS Settings is what it's called. Right. So let's do the new CSS Settings. And so you can, you can do something fancy, new CSS Settings. So we can say, there's one called like, how hard do you want to compress? Okay, where's output mode, maybe? No. Well, here you have it. So you can say single line, multi lines. You can, anyway, you can set different. Replacement, remove this. It's really quite powerful. Do you want to keep comments or not? Anyway, let's not look at that right now, because that is an exercise, I think, for the viewer to say, well, how do they want their SAS compiler to work, right? Okay, but you notice one thing that was kind of annoying. I had to go to the SAS Filing Solution Explorer and go to the properties and then type in the word SAS Transpiler to make it work. So that was kind of annoying. So let's see if there's something else we can do. We can, there's two things we can do. There's one that I'm going to show you right here first, which is we can hook these things up so they would just work automatically. So I can say provide code generator extension, okay? And the name of this is SAS Transpiler.name. And now I have to find what extension should this apply to. Well, SCSS files. Actually, this particular extension, so SCSS, it actually has more than one file extension. I can also do with SAS like this. So I can just do two of these. And so the thing about doing it this way is that that's kind of nice, depending on your scenario. So let me just show you how that actually, what that looks like and how you would use it. So we're just going to open our same app again. And this time I'm going to add a new item. And this is a SAS file. And styleset 2, yeah, sure. And add. And this one, if I click it, it already has SAS Transpiler on it. There it is. See, it converted. See, it uses hex because that's shorter than yellow. It's kind of clever, that in Uglify. So now it's on automatically. So every time you add a new SAS file, you get that automatically. Is that a good idea for this particular scenario? I think it is not a good idea. Why is that? Because I'm going to remove this SAS Transpiler here, because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a file here that's basically just, this is, and I'm going to rename this to variables, for instance. So let's say that I have a theme, maybe it's my theme file, and so it just has like background color, blue, you know, what was the other one? Alignment, right? So in my SAS file here, instead of defining my variable here, I can import my, I always forget how this works. Is this how it works? Now we can do it like this, color or background color. Do Yeah, see, I even get intelligent background color like this. So now when I save this file, I want this to work, right? Oh, that didn't work. So, okay, so I need to change the transpiler so that it will automatically load other files. But it could totally be that I'm using this here wrong. I always forget how to do these imports. Anyway. There we go. So what I want to do instead is that I want to go ahead and close all this down. Let's just save it. I want to do something else. I want to add a command so that you can just right click the file you want and say, I want to transpile this particular SAS file. So we're going to load a new command and we're going to call this custom tool command. That's going to give us a bunch of stuff. All right. So what did we get? We got our, where's it? Custom tool command right here. So this is the one we're going to modify. We got an icon, which we're going to nuke. Go away. Then we got a VSCT file where we can define, I'm going to remove the comment here, where we can define the command that we're going to do. And I'm going to rename this file to something I always like to call VS command table. And see here, VS command table has a single file generator, right? It already produces sort of a code behind because I have an extension installed with a single file generator that does that for me. So that's kind of neat. Okay, so I want to import some images. So I want to include our known monikers like this. And then we're going to figure out how to put our transpile into CSS. Let's make the command name that. So when you right click, it should be that. So now we need to figure out where to put it. But actually first, let's do an image. Let's do image catalog. And let's do, we already have a SAS button in there somewhere. SAS style sheet. What does that look like, you might ask? Let's find out. Looks like that. So Visual Studio already shipped with that. So let's just reuse that. And when we do that, we have to make a command flag called icon is moniker. So now I can use that as my command icon. Which is wonderful. And I deleted the bitmaps, that PNG file. So let's get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so now my button is parented in the group called, that's up here, which is again parented on the tools menu. That's this one. I don't want it here. I want it in my context menu. So I'm gonna just write something here. Context menu. So it's something about node. And context menu is always here. Project item node. Now the item node is basically any node out here, any file that's out here in Solution Explorer. So I'm going to inject my group into here somewhere on priority 600. So we'll see 600 where that's going to put it. And that's kind of cool. Should I just keep these? I kind of don't like, I'm just going to change this to, no, it's fine.
How did the priorities work? Random 600, just random?
Mm-hmm. So the higher the number, the further down on the list it is added. If I put 0 in there, it will be at the top.
You don't want that. That's mean.
So yeah. So good call there. Don't mess with people's muscle memory. And what is in the top, like you probably know, like build and all. You probably use these sometimes, and so don't interfere with muscle memory. Get further down the list where you won't be as visible, maybe, or as if you're not the primary thing. But you know, for this particular case, why would you right-click a SAS file? I don't know. So I think maybe we want to be at the top, because isn't that the primary thing you'd want to do if you right-click? Let's do 100, see what happens.
Okay. Yeah, we also have a lot of good questions, but I'm going to get to them when you finish this part. So don't worry. I am monitoring the chat, everybody, and we'll answer some questions in a bit.
All right. So now we just need to get into our, and I always rewrite my command based on this. So I'll just kind of nuke all this. Now I'm going to take all this with me. Put it right in here. Basically going to just simplify this. Delete all this. So initialize async is my command registration method. So my package will call this method. And we're going to just assume present. This is just something that's going to help us. But let's actually, that's always good to have. But let's fix this so that we do it in sort of the modern way, which I a little prefer. There we go. And if we want to be even cooler, we can just do menu command service, because that will actually work.
Another good question here that's topical is from Topco again. Asks, is there any way to assign a default shortcut key for the command? Like while you're in there setting up that? Is that in the VSCT somewhere?
If we have time for that, I'll do that. Also watch last week's episode where we do that. Did we do that? Maybe we don't. So let's see if we can get to it this week.
We did it one time, I feel like. That needs to be part of the template, like commented out by default, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so actually, let's just nuke this for the sake of simplicity. So, okay, I want my package do it, and this is my command set. So let's just take a look at that. So my VSCT file on my button, my command, I'm using this GUID, SAS, which is defined down here. Okay, and I'm using this ID. So any command is a pair of a GUID and an ID. Okay. There can be many commands using the same GUID, but they would then have different IDs. So, and because I have under my VSCT file, I already have a single file generator that spits out C#, I have a hard-coded version of all those. So I have a single source of truth, which is my XML file, and that synchronizes automatically to my C# file here, which means I can now use them. If I can find the command, I can now use them right here in a very, very easy way. Package IDs, and it was a custom tool. There we go. So what am I doing? I'm basically getting a command service from VS, and I'm now registering the command. I don't think they selected good names here. I think these names here are better. In the template, they should have done something different. Okay, I'm going to use the DTE now. People say, well, don't use the DTE. I'm like, no, it's okay. Use the DTE. Unless there's an easier, prettier way or better way to use something else. So I'm gonna get the DTE, and we're gonna get service async, and I'm gonna get DTE, cast it as DTE2. I don't really have to for what I'm about to do, but let's just do that. So let's include both of these. So DTE2 is just a newer version of the DTE, but the service is registered under the old one. So I could just cast it to the new interface, and then we have the same.
Lots of good questions. Like, what is a DTE?
Yeah, it's my I never remember what it stands for, but the DTE is basically a way for you to get to sort of a lot of common extensibility points in a central location. So if we look at the DTE dot, you can see here I can access the solution, tool windows, events, the debugger, all sorts of things are hanging off of the DTE object. And it was originally written to do macros. So back when Visual Studio had macros, you could very easily write macros with the DTE. You had access to a bunch of stuff, but it's not really maintained, and it doesn't live in the world of async await. So generally we say if you can use something else, that's a better thing to do. But sometimes that's just hard to do because it's really complicated to use other interfaces or services instead. And this is one of those cases there where it is more complicated. If you have a version to do this simpler, what I'm about to show you, then please let me know, because I would like to know.
So
So
Jan thinks it's either development tools environment or design time extensibility. One of those.
they both look good. They both sound very plausible.
Also, Jan has a recommendation, which is it's called custom tool command currently, but shouldn't it be something called like transpile command or something like that?
Yeah, that was what I was about to write, but then I was like, oh, it actually adds a custom tool is what it does, right? So maybe. So, okay, so now we got the DTE. So I'm going to take the DTE and I'm going to pass it to my execute method that I have down here. This. And so now I need to find out selected items. And this is a one array, what do you call it? One indexed, not zero based, it's a one based index. So the first selected file or item, what's that complaining about? Oh, there it is. What type is this? Selected item, selected items. Oh, item, here we go. Item number, index number 1. Dot project item. So we're getting a few complaints here. It wants to make sure that I'm on the UI thread here. So throw if not on the UI thread. That's always good to do. Okay, so now I have the project item. The project item basically corresponds to the object model behind a node in the Solution Explorer. So now I have a bunch of things around that. So let's see what hangs off of an item. I can get to the project. I can see the name or file name associated with it. I can open the file. I can delete the file. You know, the list is actually pretty long. And so this is a great way to, you can save, you can do all sorts of things. But what we want to do here is that we want to add properties. We want to add properties. Item. What is this item thing? The property. We call add. Item. And I'm going to call a custom tool. What does it give me? Okay. But value equals my SAS Transpiler.name. Okay. Okay. Oops. Does this make sense to people? I'm grabbing my SAS file and then okay, let's just run it.
Nick was asking any reason that's a static void execute.
Yes, it's for me to keep this command handler as simple as possible, because the entrance to it is a static, and so I could new up an instance of this class to call an execute method here, but I don't have to, right? You don't want to. This is like if you've done web and you've done MVC, and you have these controllers. This C in MVC is a controller. You don't want them to be fat, like have a lot of logic in it. You want them to be kind of lean and just call into sort of your business logic layer, right? And it's the same thing for commands like this. So it's not like, because when some things are static, they're hard to mock, so you can't really unit test them very well. But maybe you don't want to be unit testing stuff that's in a command handler, right? Because you want to keep that thin. And so you want to unit test your business logic that lives somewhere else. But this is so simple. There is no logic. I don't have to. That's my philosophy about it. Yours might be different. Okay. So let's see. Let's see if this will work. I'm going to right click. Oh, transpile into CSS shows up right there. That's actually a pretty good spot for it, I'd say. You could say, why do we have code cleanup on a SAS file when SAS is not part of the code cleanup? I should open that bug. That doesn't seem right. So now I'll just click here. Boop. And you see down here, SAS Transpiler just got added. How sweet is that? So I'm very happy about this. Obviously, it's not producing anything because there's nothing here. Variables in themselves just compile into nothing, right? There's no. So let's just do something. Body height, 2 pixels. And save that. And now we have our code behind. So yeah, you could say that it's slowing it down, but only when you save, not when you're typing. And so you're never going to notice this. Well, if you do something really slow, then you're going to notice it. But it's just for the save. It's okay. It's not going to be problematic. Okay, so that was kind of cool, right? So let's right-click our CSS file. Oops. I can also transpile that into CSS. What about our program.cs? Yikes, same thing. So we want to make sure that our command is only visible on SAS files. Okay, let's figure out how to do that. So, but actually, before we do that, I want to do a little cleanup. I want to simplify a few things. So if we go to our package class, that's not it. There it is. I'm going to remove these two because, or I'm just going to comment them out. I didn't want these two. I don't want to provide by default that we're attaching the SAS compiler custom tool to any SAS file, right? So I want to use this command instead. So let's just clean this up just a little bit. So see here, here's where we call the initialize async on my custom tool command. So that's the entry point to it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to clean up it up. So the GUID is referenced over here, but we don't need that because that GUID, package GUID, dot, we have a package string here, and you see 364 BD something. That's the same as down here. So I'm going to do that, and that allows me to delete this. Nice. Okay. So now I'm going to do something called a visibility constraint. This is an extremely important thing for performance reasons for everyone that write extensions to know about. Visibility constraints is your friend. It reduces the need for you to write some logic, as we'll see in a moment. But it will also do such that you can control the visibility of your commands without loading your extension. And that's really important because we don't want to load our extension before we have to, right? And if I right-click a C# file or a C++ file or whatever, I don't want my extension to load, but I don't want my command to be visible at that point, right? So I need to control visibility without being able to load my extension. And so that's what visibility constraints are. So let's go take a look. I prepared a little bit, and this is your friend. I actually used this. This is something that was introduced in Visual Studio 2015. This particular way of doing it that I'm going to show you. And I still, to this day, I come back to this documentation every time, just because I don't remember the syntax. So it allows us to do a rule-based UI context. So let's take a look. If we go down here, I'm gonna just I'm just gonna grab this and go back and explain it while when I paste it in here. I'm gonna just paste it in right here. But what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create a rule that is true only when the file that is selected is a SAS file. Okay. So it needs a GUID. So let's go create a GUID. I like all my GUIDs in right here. So this is going to be a SAS. Call it GUID SAS UI rule. Okay. And it needs an ID. or a GUID rather. So let's just give it one. Control K space if you have the right extension. Hey James, did we tell people to install the extensibility essentials today? Remember to install extensibility essentials. It's essential. It's true. An extension for extension authors when they're writing extensions, and it gives you all sorts of tools. Some of which I've showed you already. I kind of forget that I need that I need to say it anymore because it's I always have it installed. So okay, so now we have our GUID. So I'm just gonna do that. So we're gonna do package GUIDs, and we called it GUID SAS rule, and it creates a string right here. So what name should we give it? Let's just call it SAS files. And here's kind of an interesting thing. So it has an array of different things. So I can say, give me SAS. So SAS files or SAS. So I could say, okay, I could, whoop, that went wrong. SAS, let's just call it that. And then the expression is SAS. We're going to get back to that in a second. So I could say, okay, anything that ends with .SAS, like that. But I also want one more. I want both SAS files and SCSS files, right? SCSS files. Now my terms are like SAS, and so I basically gonna name these rules. So SCSS. So now my expression can be SAS or SCSS. Okay. It could also be something like this. If it's a SAS file or a CSS file, and my project type has a certain GUID or whatever, I can continue this on, right, and make as many as I want. So, but let's just call it SAS. But I have a trick for you here. This is actually regex, so I can do this. I need to say it has to end with either A or so that's regex, right? I think this will work. Yeah, I think this will work. Okay, so now this is created. Now I need to make sure that my button looks at this rule. So if we go back here, I'm going to create something here called visibility constraints. I'm going to hit tab to create to unfold the snippet here. And now I need to specify basically the GUID ID pair of my command, my button. That was a custom tool one. What's the context now? Context here is GUID SAS UI rule. There it is. So now I'm just saying that this command's visibility is now controlled from visibility commands if I add a command flag here that allows for it. So dynamic visibility. I'm going to add a dynamic visibility command flag. That's kind of cool. So let's run this again.
Some good questions about the regex. Can you show the regex again that you were doing?
Yeah, totally.
Questions they had was it case sensitive, insensitive? Is that a standard regex? Also, why do we need both the expression and the term names?
It's because you can do some fancy stuff. I'm not sure it doesn't say what type of regex it is. If it's a standard or I'm sure it's just the .NET one. It's probably case insensitive. I could imagine. We can try it, but yeah. Usually file names are not case sensitive, so regex here in that case. So you have multiple term names such that you can do that expression with logical like and or and all this sort of stuff. It's verbose, yes, I know, but that gives you that flexibility of doing all sorts of weird things. And you can see here what you can do as a list here. You can look at user settings. So is a setting of your extension, for instance, has that been set to a certain value, or no, does it exist or not? Then don't load or load my package or whatever it is, right? And so you can combine, like if it's a SAS file and the setting has not been set and the active project is an ASP.NET Core app, you know, and it has this build project type. You can really like do funky things there. It's very expressive, and that's why it has that sort of verbosity. Okay, so let's run this, and then I'll show you a little thing that you may not know. Which is kind of weird. I think it's very weird, and it's one of those things. If you don't know, you don't know. Unfortunately, a lot of extension work is like that. So let's open our .NET solution here. Okay, so let's add a new SAS file. And we can call that, I'm going to call it header. Okay, so this header file does not have my custom tool, doesn't have the SAS Transpiler, right? Because we've removed those attributes, so it doesn't automatically do it. If I right-click my program CS, it does not have my command, but if I right-click my header SCSS, it does have it. Okay, so it works, right? That's fantastic. Now let's just click it. So now from clicking it, so here's what happens when you click a command for the first time. It loads your package. So clicking that automatically loads your package, run the initialize async, and then executes the command. Now, if I do it again, it will just execute the command because it's already registered. I don't need to run the extension again or load my package again. So let's right-click program. What is that? So I'm right-clicking program CS. So why does that now all of a sudden have my command? A moment ago, it didn't have it. So why does it have it now? Well, because the visibility constraints control the visibility of your item when your package is not loaded. Only when it's not loaded, okay? So that means, let me just close it. Yeah, let's save it and close it down. So that means that, you know, you may have to come in here to your command in here and handle the visibility yourself. So I'm going to change my menu command to an older menu command, and now you can do before query status and create like a command handler for that. You know, maybe you probably want something like this. Just going to show you here what kind of stuff we have to do. So we can pass in the DTE again. This. Get our project item. And then ask item file names. And this is a zero-based index. No, this is not. File name. So we can, okay. So is file name dot, you know, ends with, let's say, this is like a very simplified version, right? But let's say dot .scss. Then, okay, if this is a SAS file, then I'm gonna, oh, I forgot I should have the command itself. So I should say something like this. All right, something like this, whatever. I guess the correct one would be to do it this way, or the shorter one. So I could do that, right? So this basically now, because my file is now loaded, my extension is loaded, that means that before query status will now run. It doesn't run if your package is not loaded. So it wouldn't have been able to deal with the case that we had in the very beginning when our package was not loaded and everything worked fine with the visibility constraint. This would only work if my package was loaded. So what a lot of people do is that they just do this, and then they auto load their package when, let's say, a solution is being opened. Then they automatically just load their package, whether or not their extension is going to be used or not. And that's the bad thing to do. That's the wrong thing to do. So the right thing is either to do what I'm doing here, which means now you're using visibility constraints, and you're using before query status, which is basically running before the menus are being shown. But there's a better way. And so once you have a visibility constraint that completely fully works and you don't need any other logic to express your visibility. And we can do something that is completely and utterly insane, and that it works. And that is basically, I can do this. I can say that the command is not supported. Okay, let's run this. So I had no idea about this. I found out about this a couple of years ago. And I think they were actually planning on actually, maybe they've done that already. They were planning on adding an overload. They did. Here's a Boolean: query status supported, false. So that would be the same thing as, and it just sets this attribute right here. So this only works if you're doing extensions for 2019. If you're using an older version of the SDK to support 2017 or earlier, the overload doesn't exist, and you have to do supported equals false. But I do that down there. I forgot about that. Okay, so now I right-click Program CS. It's not there. Header CSS CSS, and it's there. I'm going to execute my command. So now it's loaded. But let's click on Program CS. It's no longer there. Okay. So what happens is when we say supported equals false, and it basically means it's query status supported. It's very, very strange, right? It basically means don't ignore my query status and defer back to the visibility constraints. That's what that means. So we're basically handing off, saying, no, this command does not care or doesn't want to get involved in the visibility. Just do whatever was in the visibility constraint. That's all we need. Oh, this is awesome. Thank you, Ryan. His name is Ryan. I implemented this. Some more cleanup. Okay. So there's a question here from Tapco. So when you execute command on a file, it attaches to the file automatically. I don't understand the question.
I think it's like, is the command aware of the file?
The command is not aware of the file. So yeah, let me explain that. So, okay, if you look at the VSCT, we are saying, the constraint here. So there is a visibility rule that lives in the command system, which kind of transcends your extension. It has nothing to do with your extension. There is a one cached command table with all commands and visibility constraints and keyboard shortcuts and everything combined into one kind of native object. And that gets generated after your extension has been installed. So it looks at your visibility constraint that we define in our XML file and puts that into that big cached native object. At this point, your extension is not even being considered. So it will create all the menus are being created without even looking at your extension. It doesn't have to even know that your extension exists for that to work. So the constraint says that there's a button in the command that should be visible when the hierarchy single selection name ends with SAS. Okay. So hierarchy is basically another word for Solution Explorer file hierarchy. And that's what that means. But it also, I think, actually also corresponds to if your file is open and you're active on that editor. The editor window is active on that file. I think then it's true as well. But you're not showing the command at that point. The command is only shown when you right-click, and therefore it will be visible in the context menu. So when we then go into our command and we execute, you see the first thing it does is say, well, what item is selected in my Solution Explorer? That's the first thing it asks for. Because that is, the command itself doesn't know. The command has to ask the API of Visual Studio saying, what is the file that's the current one? And then it will just go from there. And this one completely blankly trust that the visibility command will not give it any other files than SAS files. And therefore, we don't need to do any deeper logic in figuring that out. But you could totally imagine that it would be deeper. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. Okay. So far, so good. Oh, we're at time. Should we do a keyboard shortcut real quick? Let's find one. There was a question about keyboard shortcut. So I go to Tools, Options, Keyboard, and let's just find one that's available. Control Shift 9. Oh, really? Is that available? How can that? Control Shift 1? Oh, that's taken. 2. What about SAS? Control Shift S, of course, is taken. So we do, yeah, let's just do 9. Control Shift 9. That's a good one. So we go to our command table and we do key bindings. And this one, we want the same one again. We want to refer to our command that is called custom command ID. And the editor in question is this one, 97. That just means the global scope. Oh. And key 1 is 9, we decided. And my modifier keys are Control and Shift. Is it case sensitive? Yes, it was case sensitive. So that was it. We actually forgot an important thing, which was to add a loc canonical name, which you always have to remember. We don't have to, but I like to always do it, and it has to start with a dot. So we do this, and we say SAS Transpiler dot transpile file. That's now the actual name of our command if we do it this way. So that's kind of nice. So now we can right click and we now have Control Shift F9 right there. Simple, simple. And we can go up here. And so now we might actually not be able to go up here because I didn't give it a loc canonical name. But Control Shift 9. Yeah, here, project and solutions, context menu, transpile, blah, blah, blah. That very long line that's right there is not very friendly, right? So what I did was by adding this loc, the loc canonical name, we can now decide exactly how we want our command to show up. Because, you know, we want to do that because, and that doesn't matter if we have a keyboard shortcut or not assigned to our command. We always want to do that because people might need the command for some things. They might want to assign a keyboard shortcut if there wasn't one, or change an existing one. So now transpile should just show here. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that pretty? So now if we do Control Shift 9 in here, get that nice look of it. And then there's only one thing left to do. I guess there's a few, but let's at least do a nice logo for our extension here. Let's export this in 90 by 90, which is the size we want our icon to be. I'm going to call this icon. That. Let's include that in our project. We can then go to our V6 manifest. It's called SAS compiler. We're going to add our icon here. And the name of the description of this, I think I already had that kind of. Yeah. This is good enough. It's not long enough. Transpile SAS files into CSS every time you save the file. Like this, right? And that's cool. do another very important thing, which is, where's our Pomodoro? We did that a couple of weeks ago. Let's grab all these files here and put that into our SAS compiler right there. Yes, let's run that. And then we're going to add existing items. SAS compiler, I want to see appvar and readme. So the readme file is now for a different one. We're going to rename this SAS compiler, compilter, and coming soon. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to add a license, add existing file or existing item. I'm going to go back up one. We're going to get the license file. I'm going to add that as a link and make sure that it is set as content and included in the V6. Same with my icon right there. Now I can go in here and add resources license. There we go. So that's pretty sweet. Let's go ahead and add this to Git, create Git repository. Let's call it SAS compiler, uncheck private. We want this to be a public. And let's push it out. So James, can you share that URL on the stream? You already did it. Excellent, thank you. So let's hit F5, see if it's already there. It was. All right. Sweet. So there's some tweaks here that needs to be done. I'll go ahead and do those. Can I have a custom tool on a folder instead of a file? That was a question here. I do not believe that you can. No, sorry. It has to be a file. Yeah.
We also got another question from Yuli earlier. A lot of questions around multi-file stuff. So for example, like, could you run it on multiple files at the same time, or combine multiple files into a new file?
Yeah, yeah. The answer to all those are yes. So with the visibility constraints, this one says single selection name. So this one, do I have it running?
Like, because I could imagine what I would want is maybe I would want to do it on all my single files, but then maybe I would want like a high level, like on my solution that says generate a minify CSS, right, into a single file. Yes. But that would just be a different command, right?
No, you can totally do those. Will they work for linked files? I actually don't know if they work for linked files. They might. So let's just click on two of them and see if that works. No, it doesn't. So if you want to deal with multiple files, let's take that one first, and then we can take yours, James. So multiple files. You may have to load your extension and control that through the command. So do it before query status, and then you cycle through them. So you have selected items. Okay, there are multiple selected items. And so there's a count, so you can just do for each item, go through them. You can even ask, DT select, is it multi? Do you have more than one? If you have more than one, just loop through each of them and set the custom tool value just the same way as here, right? So just do for each item in DT, selected items, or actually it's probably a while loop on the count, or a for loop on the count, something like that. So that's easy. So that's totally doable, but then you may have to control the visibility from the before query status. Now, James, if you want to say that, okay, I want to right-click a folder so that I can say compile all my SAS files in this folder, or on the project, or on the solution, right? Then you can totally do that. So you would probably create a different command. And if we go to the VSCT file, you would create a different command. It would be in a different group probably. Let's say it's a folder. You want it so it works in folders. Then you do context or folder. Where we go? Folder add here. And there's the project folders. There we go. Folder node. That means a folder. You can right click a folder and now it will show up there. And of course, if it's a project, you got that project node right there, and you have a solution node too.
So you could add all those in there. You can say whatever you want to do.
Right. So if you do solution node, then you just come in here in the DTE, and you would go. You would probably say solution dot, projects. Loop through all the projects, and then find all the files in each project that's a SAS file, and then set this item property. So you can totally do that.
Cool.
We have more questions?
Those were the big ones that I was going to get back to. Let me see if I have anything up here. Oh, yeah. Someone, Mark was asking a little bit about, through all of this, you've been doing custom commands. There's the scenario, which is like this only runs in Visual Studio. So if you were modifying those files outside of Visual Studio, I don't know how you ever would, but if you were, that wouldn't work. So Mark was suggesting, an MS build task. Now, of course, I think at a high level, you wrote this as a sample of like, look, what you could do, right?
Yep.
Not that this is the best or most amazing use case, but maybe it is for you, Mads, because you only use Visual Studio.
Yeah,
but
it kind of is, right? So, if you remember back to Web Essentials, to the days of Web Essentials, but even today, where a lot of people use Web Compiler and the bundle config extensions, then it happens on build time. On design time, just like it does here. It doesn't use single file generators. It's a lot more complex, and so it uses different mechanisms. But having it design time, if you're just just you on the team, or you have a small team where you can control what extensions to install and all that sort of stuff, it's by far the most efficient. Like if you take the Node.js community, they've kind of fixed this whole thing by adding, back in the day it was grunt and gulp tasks, and now we use Webpack and other technologies where you have a watcher that watches the file system and that then generates these files. And that you can have that. So you just basically start up that task automatically. You type in your console, npm watch, or whatever it is, gulp watch, Webpack watch. I forget all those commands, and then it starts watching your file system, and then it saves everything. So that's another good way. And then at that point, it follows the project, and you just have in your description that you start those things up, right? When you load the project. So that's one way of solving this. I guess you could do the same with like .NET Global Tools and other things, and have that as a Nuget package that goes with your project. But if you're just a hobbyist, or you sit or you do web on your own or whatever, this is absolutely fine. Like people did this for years. Like there's no moving parts, right? Like you don't have any artifacts in your project. Well, you have an artifact in that you produce a CSS file on disk. That is the only artifact. But there's no other trace of it anywhere in your project. So in this case, I would actually commit to source control the CSS files. And so that makes the design time different. You can argue like for and against doing that, but that's what I would do. If you want 0 artifacts for compiling CSS, SAS files to CSS, you could do something like using the web compiler, the LigerShark web compiler Nuget package that does it at runtime and does it in a very, very smart way. That's how I would probably do it today. But it's kind of .NET Core. It doesn't work everywhere. And again, now you have a Nuget package that does things in your project. But that's another way of doing it. So that means I don't think there's any right or wrong. But if your scenario is geared toward large teams and stuff like that, then maybe use the runtime one. The MS Build one is never a good idea. Never. You never want to compile to do this. Not for this use case. Yeah.
So lots of good stuff here. Charles wants to know, how do you deploy it to the Microsoft Marketplace? I think you've talked about the Visix gallery quite a bit, which is you run that, right?
Totally.
I have an extension in the Microsoft Marketplace.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh.
Actually, not in the Microsoft. I have it in the Microsoft Marketplace for Azure DevOps. That was actually really hard to get into. That was actually the hardest, I think. Or maybe they're all hard. I don't know.
So to put that in there, you just go to marketplace.visualstudio.com, sign in. I'm already signed in. Sign in. And then click up in the right corner. It says Publish Extensions. And that takes you into sort of your publisher view. And then...
I just installed one of yours. I finally installed your VS Code extension. I had to do it. Because every time I watch, I'm always like, which extension are you using that I forget that I need to install?
Mm-hmm. So you come in here, you get a list of all your extensions, and then you say new extension Visual Studio. And then we need to upload a file, and you just go in, you find the one that we've just been building right here, SAS Compiler, drag that on, boom, continue. So now it uploads it. What do we want to call it? I want to call it SAS Compiler. So that means it's going to be part of the URL. You're not really going to see this anywhere. And then the short description, I feel like, so this is the part where you want to be really good and have a really good description. And my description is coming soon. We did have one here. I kind of like to keep it in sync with my. It's here. Oh, down here. Do it like this. And it's a tool. What categories do we want? This is web. I feel like there's a web. It's not alphabetically for some reason. And tags. Let's do SAS. There's SCSS. Transpile. CSS. And it's free. And where does it live? It lived on. Oh. This address. There. Save and upload. So how it does that. And it disappears somewhere alphabetically down the list. So we just click update it. Now it goes up to the front. So now it's running through a verification step here. And so the marketplace is like figuring out, if it's following sort of the rules and it's not doing something dangerous. And then when it's done, I will be able to say it's private. No one will be able to see it, but there will be a button here that says make public. So let's take here, Julia, we did that the other day. It says make private. So the reverse of that is make public, right? So this one here will say make public, and that's it. So I will go ahead and do that, and when it's done, and then it will be on the marketplace for people to try it out. But I'll just do a few cleanups. Yeah.
Now, for you to become an author, did you have to do anything special? Like, did you have to get approved to be an author or something?
No. Anyone can be an author. You just sign in using your Microsoft account, like your like your Hotmail account or whatever.
The Outlook, Hotmail, MS,
Live.com.
Live. What was that? What was the .NET one?
.NET one.
You could use to sign in with like your MS.NET account or whatever, right? MS.NET account. No, I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure like there used to be like a big .NET button on like websites, I swear.
Huh.
No, right? People could tell me if I'm wrong. I thought like there used to be like a sign in with your Microsoft Net account. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know. That was a long time ago. Like how you're just hitting F5, refreshing.
So Nick says live.net. Yeah.
Live.net. That's what it was, right? Yeah, live.
I thought it was live.com. That was like the
Live.com?
start page of the internet, right? We had like live.com was like the Microsoft start page, wasn't it?
Yeah, live.com. I'm just Googling for images. Someone has that.
Live.com went to Outlook, so I just closed that down really quick.
Whoops.
I don't know what's going on.
It does go to, it goes, yeah, it used to be that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So on the screen here, you see it's now done. And I have and I have a button here that says make public.
Oh, now it's public.
Are you sure? Yes. And so now I can open this up. Copy this, paste it into chat. Boom. And I don't know if it takes a minute for you to see it, everybody, but it should be in the chat.
Not there.
Yeah. So that's how you upload that. But you can see this one is gonna get 0 downloads because it doesn't have a good description. It doesn't have any screenshots. So that is the first thing we want to do. That is extremely important.
1-star review. Terrible description. I refuse to install this.
Yeah. Right. I wouldn't install it either. No, you wouldn't. I mean, it needs thousands of installs if I were to install something based on its title alone. It has to be. I would need to have heard about it somewhere else.
It does say from Mads Kristensen, and like people already have about 20 of your other extensions installed. So by proxy, it's pretty trusted.
Well, but does it do what you think it will do?
I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, right? Who wants, even if it's a Microsoft extension, if you don't know what it's going to do, if you don't have an expectation of what it's going to do, would you really install it? I don't know.
Oh, probably not.
Yeah.
Add new file. I think it adds a new file.
But there's some good screenshots on that one.
There are, and there's 460,000 installs. Is that your most popular? Oh, you can't sort by most popular.
No, I can't.
I can't. Can't publicly.
No, you can't. Well, you just search my name and then you just.
Oh, so I tapped on your name. I tapped on your publisher name. But
Web Essentials 2012.
1.2 million. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay. What does Jan mean by a half and half show? Oh, an hour and a half show.
Hour and a half. Yeah.
I misread it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So, did we get through all of it?
I think so. I'm looking if there's anyone else. Any other questions? Topco is asking like if you were to do this on .NET Core on Linux, and I just said the .NET Global tool, which is kind of what you were talking about earlier, because you could do all that same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think you answered Steve's question earlier about doing single file generators async, which is
there is no async.
Yeah.
So the but you can do it in different ways. So you can, instead of using a single file generator, you can hook in. Maybe we should do that for another episode. How to do the exact same thing without a single file generator. It requires more code. But there are other ways to do the same thing. I just really like single file generators. They're so simple.
You know what I was thinking of is I usually type my name in Markdown. I usually do it in VS Code though, because it has a side-by-side previewer. Do we have one of those? Did you do one of those? Something like that. But it would be cool to
right here.
Yeah, that one. Is that an extension? Do I need that extension? Is that already?
Yeah.
I was thinking like it would be really cool to right click and say generate, and it would use like, it would transcribe that and translate it to all the different languages, like you were saying, that'd be really cool.
So for that, we could use single file generators, but because we're generating more than one file,
multi-file generators.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. We would probably choose a different way. Yeah.
Looking for Markdown.
But the different way is harder because now we are dealing with implementation details of the various different project systems, right? .NET Core versus .NET Framework versus C++ versus this, that, and the other. And so we have, including custom, they all implement different things. And so we can then run into issues where it works for one project system, but not the other. And then we have to do some gymnastics. And so I don't have the C++ workload installed, for instance. So I don't even test it on C++. I wouldn't even necessarily know how to. And so the test matrix becomes a lot larger and stuff like that. So single file generators is just a simple thing to do.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no more incoming. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for sticking with us for, we went over time. We were for an hour and a half. Sorry about that. I hope you got some value out of it, even though it was a bit long this time. So again, thank you so much, and see you next week.